Hello, and welcome to another online presentation material from my Music Humanities class. Again, I'm Brad, and today we're going to be talking about secular music that was going on in the medieval period. Before I do that, though, I forgot to do something in my last class. Notice that this says medieval 3 and it says Gothic. I forgot to explain what that was about. What it is that this era where Leonan and Peritan were composing. That's also this whole era here that I'll outline that in a future timeline is the medieval period. But this kind of sub period was also referred to as the Notre Dame or Gothic period because they were doing Gothic stuff back then. Anyhow. Now, we have a good record of, the church music that was happening back then because, they had if you're a Marxist, the means of production, all that nonsense. But make no mistake, through the centuries, there was a lot of music that was happening. Secular music, dance music, music that was happening in pubs and bars, music that was happening at festivals. And in the medieval period, about the middle part of the medieval period, they began to write some of this down because there began to be a market for it. In fact, musicians started making money going around and doing kind of musical stuff known as troubadours. Troubadours and or jongleurs. And these are people that would travel from town to town, set up their stuff, and I think I misspelled troubadours. And basically, entertain people. And they did some very entertaining things. Also, music began to be used as part of ceremonies for the wealthy and the powerful, the kings, the nobles. And they began to be able to afford to pay people who learned how to play on medieval instruments. There's a pretty good link to some of these instruments on the webpage for the class, and I'll let you take a look at that. I'll probably be showing it in class too if I haven't already. Anyhow, I want to play you some of this music so you can get a sense of what it sounded like, and you'll hear that this exploration of polyphony began to happen even with this music. First of all, here's a piece called Danse Real. It's a dance, obviously, and this is kind of like a built-in sort of Byzantine or Leonan chant instrument. These are performed on bagpipes, which have drones as part of their makeup. Now, here you go. Yeah. So that would be, a jongleur would say, hey, give me a beer and I'll play some stuff. And people say, well, give you a beer if you stop playing. No, kidding. Anyhow, this was, you can hear that polyphony in a way, the drone, the sort of the melismatic line on top of it. This was part and parcel. Instruments were not allowed in church. You heard the bells maybe in the Leonan and the Peritan pieces. That's, again, just speculation. It's not clear they were allowed. Church music was vocal music back then. Okay, here's another example of a secular piece. This is probably a dance piece or something. This is played on an instrument called the sham, which is kind of like a bagpipe without the drone. So there were several performers that were playing these, and it's very polyphonic music at this point. And they had a drum there. The drum was not notated. Again, that's speculation. Assuming this was a dance, they had drums. They would play the drums, and this might be a part of the musical performance. Also, I want you to notice, and you'll hear this also when we talk about some composers in the next video, that the harmonies sound a little bit weird. There's a reason for that, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But I want to play another piece. This is probably done for entertainment at maybe after a noble feast or dinner or something like this. And this is another very popular instrument, not only in the medieval period, but through the Renaissance period, called the recorder. In fact, this is still used in our educational system in the United States. You'll hear many, many young kids playing, Three Blind Mice or something like that. But here's a piece from the medieval era. You can hear they're getting very sophisticated about their polyphony. That was employing a technique called hocketing, where one thing would pause while another thing filled in the gap. And, it became kind of a badge of honor if you were a sharp enough musician that you could compose or play these kinds of things. And that led to support from the nobles. Yeah, come and play at my dinner. You're pretty cool. But this hocketing and other sort of techniques were also used, and we now began to have some secular songs that were recorded in various codices, and we can look at them and see what was going on kind of out in the fields. Here's one, again, we don't know the composer or anything. It's called Clap, Clap, par un matin, okay? Let me play a little bit for you, and I want to tell you a little about this particular piece. Okay, so it has even polyphonic lyrics. We're going to talk about that in the next video. But the part that you hear that's kind of going clap, clap, one set of lyrics is talking about this is an old mill, okay? And it's describing the mill and things like that. But another part is describing the amorous exploits of two young lovers and the progress that they are making, in time to the mill. And the clap, clap is supposed to represent these particular exploits. So again, this is not stuff that was allowed in church, but it was definitely part of the musical culture at the time. Okay, I'm going to finish up by playing a rather interesting piece. And again, most of this stuff that we've been kind of taking a look at has been from Central Northern Europe. The money and the goods were kind of there. But this is a piece that actually came from the British Isles, and in fact, it's Old English. And if you listen very hard, you can actually understand the words. This is Summer is a comin in, or summer is a coming in. Sing cuckoo, sing cuckoo. And you'll hear it's also a particular interesting kind of form that was very popular in the British Isles. This is what they call a round, and you're all familiar with it. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, where you have the parts come in at different times. And, Frere Jacques, are you sleeping, Brother John? And here's this medieval version of this.
Bloweth sad and bloweth mad, and springs the wood anew. Sing cuckoo, how I'm glad that after long those after kalve koe. Bullock stertet, bukke vertet, myre sing cuckoo. Sing cuckoo, well who singes cuckoo, es schwingt du naver nu. Sing cuckoo, summer is he coming in, summer is he coming in. Trouble sing and bloweth men, and spring the wood and bloweth men. Sing the wood and blue, sing the wood and blue. How a gampet after long,
So again, fairly sophisticated polyphony there. You know, they designed the parts to work with each other. And the British Isles, they just loved songs like this up there. We're going to hear when we get to the Renaissance period that there's a whole genre of music that basically was associated with this love of song. But I want to point out something else about this song that's kind of interesting. Earlier I said, remember how the harmony is kind of weird in that I was playing the Duktia piece. The harmony is not so weird on this. You know, listen to this again. And there you can hear all the parts beginning to build up. But they're basically they're singing this. That harmony, that's very different from the stuff we've been hearing that's been harmonies kind of like this. Those harmonies are very, what we call open harmonies. They're based on, if you remember when we talked about a scale, the intervals of a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth, a fifth and a fourth, that Sumer's de Kumanin was playing with an interval called the third. And that's very familiar to us. It's used in all of our pop songs, you know, beginning about, you know, the Renaissance period. You know, actually late medieval, we're going to start hearing this being used. This harmony was thought to be satanic by the church. It was not really allowed, especially to close a piece of music in church music. So a lot of the Renaissance music, a lot of the medieval music we hear eschews that harmony because that's not what people were hearing. But those good old British Islanders, you know, they said, well, the heck with that. It sounds cool. So they began to use this harmony called the third. You know, and this is all part of the development of music that was happening, you know, in the centuries of the medieval era. Next video, we're going to talk about a couple of composers towards the end of that era and the changes that they wrought that led the way to the Renaissance.